Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Raja Janarana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yashodanandana Raja Janarana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, biography of Srila Swami Prabhupada, the founder of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So this is Volume 6, Uniting Two Worlds, chapter entitled Reaching to America, Part 1. Srila Prabhupada sat, waiting for his massage to begin. His regular daily schedule was to take a massage at 11:30 a.m. before bathing and taking prasadam. But today, because of his plane travel, his routine was interrupted. Nevertheless, he wanted to follow his general program as far as possible. Upendra was getting mustard oil and the mat for Srila Prabhupada to sit on. So we can solve this, Prabhupada said, to the few disciples with him. Why not invite them to hear us how we can solve? We can arrange big meetings on this point. Crying, why and what to do. A very suitable headline it is. Prabhupada continued to develop a Krishna conscious analysis of crime. As long as society violates the laws of nature, he said, there must be crime. He thought it significant that, according to the Time article, the leaders of the country were actually wondering what to do about the increase in crime rate, and that they were admitting that they didn't know the solution. Now he said, our business is to give the solution to these leaders. If they actually want to the welfare of the country, all the problems could be solved by Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada had often said. And now he was eager to tackle the particular problem of crime. America's leaders were admitting their bewilderment, and if they were actually sincere, then they might accept the Krishna conscious solution. Prabhupada was keen to preach to the government leaders. Krishna consciousness was meant especially for them. Bhagavad Gita stated that the Rajarshis or saintly kings should disseminate the teachings of the Gita to the citizens. But were the leaders actually serious? Srila Prabhupada wondered. He was serious, and he anticipated the special opportunity that might arise here in Chicago to preach to the leaders about ending crime. While sitting with a group of disciples in his room, Srila Prabhupada asked for a particular Bhagavatam verse to be read, and he gave the opening Sanskrit, Kamasya Nendriya Priti. Harikesh read, a completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed toward the fulfillment of desires in sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion, or even in salvation. The very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. Srila Prabhupada interrupted. Now in India, this is happening. All these things are foreseen. I have already discussed all this in the purport. Then Harikesh continued reading. The voters adore the so-called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own sense satisfaction, they dethrone the leaders. The leaders must always dissatisfy the voters by not satisfying their senses. Again, Prabhupada interrupted. There are protest meetings and processions, but nobody will be able to satisfy them because they do not know how to keep the mass of people satisfied. These rascals, they do not know. I have always said they are rascals. Now they ask what to do. They will face so many problems. What to do? This is the beginning. The whole world will be in chaos if they do not take to Krishna consciousness. So many what to do will come. Just tell them that here is the remedy. Now it is time for preaching. They are thinking, they are sleeping, but now they are thinking what to do. They are blindly following sense gratification, and now it has come to the stage of what to do. This is the opportunity for preaching. We are the only persons who can give solution. There is no other group of any man in the world. We are only. So let them take advantage of our knowledge and apply. Now all the sannyasis have got a good opportunity to preach. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text number 19. Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. Sattvam hi me hridayam yatra dharma. Sattvam hi me hridayam yatra dharma. Prishte krito me yat adharma arad. Prishte krito me yat adharma arad. Ato hi ma rishabam prahur arya. Ato hi ma rishabam prahur arya. Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. Sattvam hi me hridayam yatra dharma. Prishte krito me yata dharma arad. Ato hi mam rishabam prahur arya. Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. Sattvam hi me hridayam yatra dharma. Prishte krito me yat adharma arad. Ato hi mam rishabam prahur arya.
Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. Sattvam hi me hridayam yatra dharma. Prishte krito mam yata dharma arad. Ato hi mam rishabam prahur arya.
Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. Sattvam hi me hridayam yatra dharma. Prishte krito me yata dharma arad. Ato hi mam rishabam prahur arya. Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. Sattvam hi me hridayam yatra dharma. Prishte krito me yata dharma arad. Ato hi mam rishabam prahur arya. Idam, this shariram, transcendental body, Sachit Ananda Vigraha, Mama, mine, Durvibhavyam, inconceivable, Sattvam, with no tinge of the material modes of nature. He, indeed, indeed,
me,
me,
my,
my,
hridayam,
hridayam,
heart,
heart,
yatra,
yatra,
wherein,
wherein,
dharma,
Dharma,
the real platform of religion,
the real platform of religion.
bhakti yoga,
bhakti yoga,
prishte,
Prishte,
on the back,
on the back.
krita,
Krito,
made,
made,
me,
me,
by me,
by me,
yat,
yes,
because,
because,
adharma,
Adama,
irreligion,
religion,
arat,
Ara,
far away,
far away,
ataha,
ataha,
therefore,
therefore,
he,
he,
indeed,
indeed,
mam,
Mam,
me,
me,
rishabam,
Rishabha,
the best of the living beings,
the best of living beings,
prahu,
Rahu,
ko,
called
arya,
Arya,
those who are
those who are
advanced in spiritual life,
advanced in spiritual life,
or the respectable superiors.
for their respectable superiors.
Translation of Bhagavad Gita. My transcendental body, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, looks exactly like a human form, but it is not a material human body. It is inconceivable. I am not forced by nature to accept a particular type of body. I take on a body by my own sweet will. My heart is also spiritual, and I always think of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of devotional service, which is meant for deep devotees. Far from my heart, I have abandoned irreligion, adharma, and non-devotional activities. They do not appeal to me. Due to all these transcendental qualities, people generally pray to me as Rishabhadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all living entities. Purport. In this verse, the words Idam Shariram Mama Durvibhavyam are very significant. Generally, we experience two energies, material energy and spiritual energy. We have some experience of the material energy, earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. Because in the material world, everyone's body is composed of these elements. Within the material body is the spirit soul, but we cannot see it with the material eyes. When we see a body full of spiritual energy, it is very difficult for us to understand how the spiritual energy can have a body. It is said that Lord Rishabhadev's body is completely spiritual. Therefore, for a materialistic person, it is very difficult to understand. For a materialistic person, the completely spiritual body is inconceivable. We have to accept the version of the Vedas when our experimental perception cannot understand a subject. As stated in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. The Supreme Lord has a body with form, but that body is not composed of material elements. It is made of spiritual bliss, eternity, and living force. By the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord can appear before us in His original spiritual body. But because we have no experience of the spiritual body, we are sometimes bewildered and see the form of the Lord as material. The Mayavadi philosophers are completely unable to conceive of a spiritual body. They say that the spirit is always impersonal, and whenever they see something personal, they take it for granted that it is material. In Bhagavad Gita 9:11 it is said, Avajanante mamudha manushimtam ashrita parambhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in a human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Unintelligent people think that the Supreme Lord accepts a body composed of the material energy. We can easily understand the material body, but we cannot understand the spiritual body. Therefore, Rishabhadev says Idam Shariram Mama Durvibhavyam. In the spiritual world, everyone has a spiritual body. There is no conception of material existence there. In the spiritual world, there is only service and the receiving of service. There is only seva, and sevaka, the person served, the process of service, and the servant. These three items are completely spiritual, and therefore the spiritual world is called absolute. There is no tinge of material contamination there. Being completely transcendental to the material conception, Lord Rishabhadev states that his heart is composed of Dharma. Dharma is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Parityaja, Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. In the spiritual world, every living entity is surrendered to the Supreme Lord and is completely on the spiritual platform. Although there are servitors, the served and service, all are spiritual and variegated. At the present moment, due to our material conception, everything is durvi bhavya, inconceivable. Being the supreme, the Lord is called Rishabha, the best. In terms of the Vedic language, Nitya, Nityanam, we are all spiritual, but we are subordinate. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the foremost living entity. The word Rishabha means the chief or the supreme and indicates the supreme being or God himself. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutam Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tum Sajivam Savitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamshcha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vachakalpatarubhya Kripa Sindhubhya Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karati Vachilam Pagum Lagrite Giri Kripatam Shri Guru Dinatana. Translation again. My transcendental body, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, looks exactly like a human form, but is not a material human body. It is inconceivable. I am not forced by nature to accept a particular type of body. I take on a body by my own sweet will. My heart is also spiritual, and I always think of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of devotional service, which is meant for the devotees. Far from my heart have I abandoned a religion or dharma and non-devotional activities. They do not appeal to me. Due to all these transcendental qualities, people generally pray to me as Rishabhadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all living entities. So there is a place that is described in a spiritual transcendental literature that are revealed by great sages or by the Lord Himself. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is actually written by incarnation of Krishna, Vyasadeva, that appeared about 5,000 years ago, and Lord Himself, who can better describe the nature of the world, because it is, as we read in this verse, our perception is limited. We have 6 senses. Sorry, yeah, we have 6 senses, and we have various things that accompany that perception. We make mistakes. We tend to cheat. We also have a limited perception of the senses, and this is the fourth one. Subject to illusion. So with this kind of limited perception, even no matter how intelligent we are, whatever knowledge we acquire, it has that limitation. We have telescopes, or we can write many types of books and etc. There is a limitation in perception, and even in the modern day, there is known like a phenomena of in the research, in a scientific research, that there is a tendency for a person to kind of bias result according to one's preconceived idea before even research. That if one have a certain idea of what the conclusion should be of the research, there is a tendency to actually get the results of the experiment also within that sphere. And it has been over a number of years now that it seems to be even the cases increasing where some of the results of research has been changed to kind of suit the certain conclusion that one is trying to achieve. So in order to get this transcendental formation, since time immemorial, the Lord appears himself, or he sends sages, his pure representatives, to share transcendental knowledge with us. And because with our limited senses, it is described, Atashi Krishna Namali Nabavedvigam Indiyai Sevanmukhi Hivadu Swayam Yavas Swaram Yada Spurat Yada. So that with our material senses, it is impossible to experience the spiritual transcendental world. It requires a purification of the heart and clarity of vision. Even in material sense, if we are influenced by a certain type of desires, motivations, bias, then the truth gets covered. If you are angry, then we will see things in a certain way. Sometimes it's described by wearing different types of colored glasses. If you see things through the green colored glasses, everything looks green. If you see things through pink glasses, everything looks pink. So our consciousness can be influenced by a certain type of different types of colors that includes anger and envy and greed and illusion, etc. So under that influence, we cannot see things as they are. However, when the heart is purified and pure and clean through the process of spiritual practices, then the sages recommend the chanting, then we can start see as things as they are. So Lord, that is described in this verse, he's speaking about himself. He's not under influence of those things like envy, greed, madness, illusion, and etc. He's completely pure and transcendental, and he's got a pure transcendental body. So we are reading today, he's describing his own nature, because it's not possible to find out the nature of the Lord by scientific experiment. Is described as we recited the Sanskrit verse, that he is beyond, is also known as adhoxygen. He is beyond the perception of the senses. And there are many things as well in this world that are beyond perception or immediate perception of gross senses. Like we infer about existence of the atoms because of the effect they produce, and like or electrons and protons, and the mind as well. Technically, we cannot see the mind with our eyes, but we perceive the mind by the effect that is there. You can see emotions, and also we also kind of think and use the mind in a various ways. And especially when we start meditation, we start to separate ourselves from the mind. We start to see it as actually a separate entity. And there is now neuroscience. They also analyze and scan the brain, and they see various effects that are there when the mind is functioning in different ways. Different parts of the brain they are activated, so it indicates that there is some subtle energy there that is manifesting in certain ways. And also various types of waves. So like this room is actually full of Wi-Fi waves, or whatever they are called, radio waves that are called Wi-Fi. And you technically cannot perceive it, although there are some people say that the effect is there on a brain or on a physical plane. It still remains to see how much effect is there in the long term. However, when you have a router and the whatever information is coming through the cable, and it comes into the router, and router distributes the radio waves, and computer picks up and transforms it into some app on a browser, and etc. This is, certain type of receiver is necessary to be able to pick up those waves while they're not exactly visible. Nowadays, we can even transfer the video information. I was thinking yesterday, I was reading when I was like 10 years old, the sci-fi book about how like a video about video phone video phone, to see a person who is on the other side of the world on the screen. It was considered sci-fi, and that was about 20 years ago or something more. It was 30 years ago. So that's was a completely sci-fi idea, but now it's completely possible. And that time, if you see something like this, it would look like this is like mystical. How you can transfer the video, but now there is a waves that transfers that information. So in order to receive that information, you need to have a receiver. So for us, or for the spiritual energy is described as the spiritual world, in order to receive that information, there is also a methodology to be able to receive it. There's a few actually stages. One is to receive it, and then another stage is to perceive it. And there is a two, at least, stages. So to receive it is described the information about spiritual world. One cannot just invent and speculate and make like a research about what is it like, because you can only make a research if you can perceive something with your senses. But the very nature of spirituality is described as spiritual energy. It cannot be perceived by material senses. So therefore we have to accept the spiritual methodology in order to perceive it. And this spiritual information is then distributed by what you would call it either like a spiritual scientist that is used to be called, and is still called sage or sadhu. A sage or sadhu is a person who has completely purified his heart, and when the heart is completely pure, then through that purity, one establishes direct connection and relationship with the Supreme Being and the spiritual world, and one can receive. It becomes like a receptor, like a router for transcendental information to descend from the spiritual world, from the spiritual realm. And those sages then, they by receiving that information, they share it presented as it is, and there are many scriptures that has been written since time immemorial, where this information about spiritual world is written down, and ultimately that information starts from Krishna. Krishna instructs and gives this knowledge to the first living being in the world, and then that starts like a chain of the teachers.
Jai.
So it actually is interestingly works simultaneously in two ways. There is this chain of what is called the cyclic succession, when the information is passed originally from Krishna and passed to the sages in time memorial, who distribute it to the students, and they accept the process of purification, purify their heart, and hear that knowledge, as mentioned, that is coming originally from Krishna. But simultaneously, by accepting that process and purifying the heart, one can also start perceiving it. Just like even if in our own life from material perspective, we can look in the times when we had a certain conception, and we couldn't understand, even let's say, like a parent's love. When a child is just small, he's just often is just like very much a taker. Just give me this food, give me lunch, give me the new toy, and it's more like a parent's. I mean, that obviously there is some affection there, etc. But often, parent is some sort of like a supplier of my needs and that kind of thing. And when one becomes grown up, becomes more responsible, becomes more and understands what parents have given, then there is more of a sense, what I can give and do for the parents. And one kind of realize, as a kid, I was very selfish, but maybe now I can do something for the parents. So the conception has changed. And sometimes, people grow up, being like a very selfish or something, and then something happens in a life, they go through some misery or suffering and etc. and realize, my God, I was very selfish, and that wasn't right. It's not just the way to live, and people just totally change when they think, wow, how I could think like this. Um, so like that, so the conception changes, consciousness can change, and everything, understanding of reality changes, the values change, everything can change by change of conception, by change of heart, by change of understanding. So we and you can start perceiving as well. If you become more sensitive, you can perceive other person's emotions. You can perceive when other person is suffering, when other person is going through something in life. So that's can be understood materially. That also spiritually, when we receive the information, it's called Sambandha Jnana, and then we put it into the practice with the information. We also get the process how to absorb that information and how to purify our heart to actually realize, apply, and live that knowledge. It's called the Abhideya, and then we start perceiving what is the goal, which is prayojana. So this is the methodology, and it is very scientific as well. That there is hypothesis, there is methodology, and there is a result, and one can actually practically, technically perceive it. Since time immemorial, people applied, they accepted this hypothesis. There is a spiritual world, there is a supreme being, and we have actually a lot of information about the supreme being. It's got a spiritual form of Satchit Ananda Vigraha, unlimitedly beautiful, powerful, strong, famous, knowledgeable, and we also belong to that realm. But somehow, never by our desire, we came here to this material world, and we have forgotten it, like in amnesia. We become contaminated by these material qualities, anger, greed, selfishness, illusion, and etc. but we can accept the scientific spiritual technology to purify our heart. And for each age, like a universe goes through various types of ages. Like we have a winter just kicked in, and as Mahego, so the whole universe as well goes through different kind of universal seasons. And in this age, the recommendation is by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one purifies the heart and can start perceiving that eternal reality is not just a theoretical understanding that you have to believe it blindly. There is no, you don't agree with this idea of just a blind faith. One can scientifically apply this methodology of chanting, uh, acquiring this transcendental knowledge coming from the sages and through the scriptures. Some scriptures are written by the sages, and this Srimad Bhagavatam is written by the Supreme Lord Himself 5,000 years ago. So we hear that information, we apply that methodology in our life, and we can perceive as our consciousness becomes purified, uplifted, and cleansed. We can technically and practically start perceiving that eternal reality. In the beginning, Prabhupada a number of times he said you can actually feel Krishna, and also we can perceive that reality as well by hearing transcendental sound vibration. And in due course of time, when the heart becomes purified more and more, we can perceive Krishna at every moment. Primanjita Churita Bhakti Vilochana Sanda Sadaiva Hridayesha Vilukayanti, that we can start seeing Krishna. And by that qualification for seeing is that when our hearts become purified and tinged with the salve of love, pure love. So it is described in our heart as completely purified from those material elements. Then the highest state of consciousness is this pure love of God, and to love of everyone in relationship with God. Everything is ultimately coming from Krishna, and therefore, when we develop love to Krishna, we can love everything and everyone. So, are there any questions or comments on this point?
How do we how do we get the salt of love to go onto our eyes so that we can see Krishna? Because somebody may be quite keen to be aware that Krishna is there, and then you just say, well, you're never going to see him because you don't put the sound.
So there are 9 different devotional processes that purifies our heart. The most potent is described as Shravanam and Kirtanam. Shravanam means hearing. So just like we receive knowledge in general through our ears, through hearing, reading, and the transcendental knowledge is also received through hearing. So like we are hearing today Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's awakening some knowledge within our heart. And it's described that knowledge is already there, but it needs to be awakened. It's like a reminding process, awakening from amnesia. So one type of things that we hear is the wisdom. Another type, very, very potent for the sage, is hearing the holy name of the Lord. And Krishna, Kale Nama Rupe Krishna Avatar. Nama Rupe Krishna Kale. How does it go? So in the sage, Krishna incarnates in the holy name. So by chanting the name of Krishna, in the beginning we maybe theoretically accepted, that's as a hypothesis. This Krishna is this name of Krishna is not different from Krishna, because Krishna is absolute. And then we can perform an experiment, try chanting this holy name of the Lord. And as we chant with sincerity, and there is a mood that comes with it as well. If you can, like a baby calling for mother, there is some eagerness, there is some drive there to reawaken that relationship. So there is a technique, but there is also spirit and mood behind the technique. Technique means we try to hear the transcendental sound vibration, and the spirit and mood is that we are calling, like a baby is calling for mother. And as we do that, then our heart becomes purified. And the sound of love, of course, that's perfection that may take a while to awaken. But as we start feeling the benefit, we will feel a cleansing effects in our heart, a kind of shift of consciousness, and certain degree of transformation. And it's described, that as that cleansing happens in the initial stages, one will feel, at least a certain degree in the beginning, a relief from material distress. These are two effects that happens when one starts performing devotional service. Is a relief from misery, at least to some extent, to some degree, because the reactions of past activities start becoming purified. And the second thing is auspiciousness. This is this because we are kind of entering this the most important kind of realm and a question that needs answered in our life. Like discovering our spiritual side. So it's considered the most auspicious, wonderful thing, because we're starting to achieve the real purpose of our existence. So, the release from misery and auspiciousness, we start experience, at least to a small degree, if we perform this experiment sincerely for a while.
And also, I had Srila Prabhupada said there's this love first comes to manifest. The first sign of this love manifesting is that there's a feeling of compassion. So we start to feel a lot of kindness. Like just if you go vegetarian, vegan, and just by doing that, it develops the kindness in the heart and become more compassion. So this is like the dawning of love. Pure love is starting to manifest now. The first sign of love, just like when the sun rises, the first sign of the sun, you see the light on the side of the cloud, and the sun is going to be coming soon. So for us, we know that salve of love is coming when our hearts are becoming soft and we can't bear to see, not just humans, but even animals suffer. So we couldn't think of taking poor little animal's life just so that we can gratify our palate, so I'm going the right direction here. My softness of heart is coming out, caring and being considerate about people. So it's beginning.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really good actually point that you brought up, vegan or vegetarian. Compassion awakens, so there's a change of consciousness. A lot of people spoke that kind of give up meat eating and kind of causing violence to animals. They say how their consciousness has changed and their perception and values, and it's difficult even to look back and think, when I used to do this, you can't even imagine how I could live like this. So there's like a change of consciousness. So that's adjustment that happens. So this is just a one thing. By changing one's diet, it has an effect. But if you can imagine, if our heart is completely transformed and purified, what kind of consciousness and how we're going to see the things, what things we're going to perceive, and what's going to be our character and etc. is described that this is already there, and this pure soul is a part and parcel of Krishna. Has that Sachit Ananda Vigraha as well in the form of eternality, bliss and knowledge. But this process of chanting that purity awakens, and the qualities of the soul is this kind of 26 different types of qualities of soul or a pure devotee that become more and more manifest in the heart as well, becomes purified.
And being poetic, being poetic, expert,
Compassionate.
Compassion, expertise of time, is it?
Yes.
No, not wasting time.
Yeah, not wasting time. Grill. Doesn't speak nonsense. And yes, I believe is the heart that is also mentioned. And also Krishna himself has got 64 qualities, and those qualities, 50 out of them can also manifest to some degree in the soul. They also, those qualities become manifest more and more as well, they become purified. So there is no more questions. No more questions. Do you have any question?
You see, when we were talking about when you're awakening for your spiritual side, and then you become more aware of the compassion and animals and love. In the beginning, does it happen like kind of you don't really know why this is happening, but it's just happening, and then you do feel more kind or kinder and more compassion for people. But in a way, it's still not totally, what I mean, like internal feeling there, or something like this. It's kind of this process.
Yeah, it's like there is this analogy, like if you have water that is full of dark color, let's say it's black, and but you start dripping drop by drop, just a pure water in it, and then some water starts overflowing from the cup, and it starts flowing out, and drop by drop, over a long period of time, that black water becomes crystal clear. So when these certain qualities awaken, and then there can be like a far away from being pure, but as we go on, then that purity awakens more and more, and it takes time as well. Also spiritual, and there's a few things that happen in the beginning. It can be also quite confusing situation for a while. That there's sometimes very nice things happening, and sometimes can be even a bit of traumatic things happen, because we kind of, it's even described, I don't know if it technically happens, but it's described as an analogy when the worm is in the cocoon, and it makes this thing around it itself. It is described, I don't know if this technically happens or scientifically anybody looked at it, but often sages use that analogy of the transformation that happens, that worm in a cocoon actually undergoes a lot of pain, and when the cocoon is open, when the butterfly comes out, we just see the final product, butterfly, the worm becomes butterfly, wonderful. But actually inside of that cocoon, a lot of actually transformation happens, and pain, and of the growth of the wings, and all this beautiful things that manifest on the wings, etc. And so getting rid, so is this kind of the only challenge and the pain and the spiritual journey is that purification is very, very beautiful and wonderful process. but to get rid of the things that would be considered impurities and the darkness inside of the heart, that is the only challenge. And you have to be open and ready for it if you want, to go forward. Some people, they kind of they don't want to look at it so much. They want to keep things as they are and kind of keep their head in the clouds, or like this. What is that bird called that puts the head in the sand? And think that everything is fine. So a lot of people are living like that. Their heads in the sand, playing this, everything is fine. But if you want to kind of awaken yourself to the higher reality, there is a certain degree of honesty required to yourself, and see that things are not exactly as they look. And in the beginning also it feels that it's only you are suffering. It seems to be other people are doing well, but it's only me going through this. But actually a lot of people are, they either kind of hiding it and not being honest to themselves, or they maybe just living into the bubble of a good karma. They go into a good patch and think everything is fine. In my life, until that karma runs out. And for some people it doesn't run out until very late stages of life. And often we just tend to present our best side, our life, like put it on Facebook on my good days. If you look, and majority of people, they putting their best pictures and their best party. And not so many people just, reveal that I'm having a bad day. So there is a bit of that as well, like being honest, and like trying to find what is really going on, and trying to find, why I'm suffering, etc. It can be quite challenging, and trying to understand what it's all about. But if one is prepared to go through that and understand it, you can discover, there is actually a lot of people who already went through this, and they have a lot of realizations, and they have a lot to share. And some people are, so much ahead in terms of their cleansing of the body, etc. It feels like you discovering the whole other world. Where I was, where I wasn't in Mario, where my head was in the clouds or in the sun. Which is kind of amazing. There is a lot of people actually on this path of spirituality that they didn't realize they existed. And so when your consciousness change, your association and vibration, and the whole circles of like the people that you are connecting, you change, because you like almost discover the whole different world that is there, that we are aware of. So that answers the question. Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Shila Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Prema. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.